Alrighty, how's it going, Mets and overall baseball fans? Thank you guys so much for chiming in for the latest show here on the channel. Guys, we have so much to deep dive in a fairly short period of time, as this is the latest series preview show, this time in a 4-game set that begins tonight. Just a couple hours from now, 7:10 p.m. Eastern Time, the Mets matching up for the first of many times this season and many times over the next couple weeks to a month plus against, yes, the Miami Marlins. So, folks, I will be deep diving everything that you guys need to know about this 4-game set for the Mets. What we know to this point, because I would like to first emphasize there's still uncertainties as to who's going to be pitching for the Marlins tonight, other than speculation, and who's going to be pitching for both sides here in the series finale, which is a day game this Monday of the 4-game set. So, plenty to get into. We have some health updates regarding Eduardo Escobar, not so much on Taiwan Mcgill, but no less. If we find out further information here in the live show, then great, then I'll share it with you all as it transpires. And if not, then I'll make sure to put you guys up to date with everything in tonight's post-game show that I will, of course, be recapping tonight's game, win or lose, between the Mets and the Marlins. But a lot to get into. There is a lot that needs to really be broken down, and I do appreciate everyone first chiming in. If you guys are just chiming in the live show, don't hesitate to smash that like and subscribe on. Greatly appreciate it. Help us get to 100 likes for the first short-term goal, and help us get a 16K subs for the next short-term goal here on WardyNYM. We're only a couple hundred away, so greatly appreciate it. And thank you all so much, everyone that chimed in on last night's post-game show as we broke down the Mets series victory, winning 5-4 in a dramatic fashion. And of course, breaking down everything there was to know at the time about Taiwan Mcgill. Same thing with Eduardo Escobar. Took some live callers. We may take live callers tonight too in our post-game segment, so stay tuned for that. But enough of me ranting about really everything that there is to know about today's show. Let me start off by giving you guys a quick update regarding Eduardo Escobar, because I know that many of you guys that are going to be watching this on replay, I don't expect this to be crazy viewership right now, and I do apologize that this is only 3 hours away right now until the first game of the series, but I purposely waited a little bit longer than I normally do for a series preview show in hopes that we would have some certainty on the likes of Eduardo Escobar and his health status. What happened to him? Why hasn't he been available other than just speculation? Along with Taiwan Mcgill, what is his imaging looking like after he, of course, exited yesterday's game with right shoulder tightness? Well, to this point, we still do not have an update on Mcgill, so we'll see what transpires in the show. But regarding Eduardo Escobar, we finally do have some substance, and someone just said that there is a Mcgill update, so let's check in on that right now. We will do exactly that. Should we have actually got an update? I don't know if we did. So again, bear with me 1 second, guys. I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. Oh, here we go. See, perfect timing for the show, at least. Breaking news. Taiwan Mcgill is shut down from throwing for 4 weeks with what the Mets are calling a right shoulder strain. Adonis Medina has been recalled. I know that Medina was recalled because I know that it was either Puma or someone else, or maybe it was Tim Healy on the beat for the Mets, said that his locker was available today. So, heartbreaking news for Taiwan Mcgill. I mean, talk about a man that has been the definition of just completely unlucky. I said this yesterday, but I'll say things once more. This was his second start back from his right bicep tendonitis that he was out for a month. He returned it in and out on Anaheim against the Angels with his family and the crowd, all family friends, because he's from Orange County area. And then he pitched last night, was cruising through the first 3 innings, then was getting worked a bit there in the fourth, exited the game with bases loaded. Shreve came in, didn't give him any help. He surrendered all the runs that ended up that were originally on the bases. And Mcgill, again, has just had terrible luck this year prior to his first injury with the bicep tendonitis. And now it looks like the Mets are going to be without him for at minimum of 2 months, if not longer. Because remember, when you're shut down without throwing for a month straight, then he needs to get ramped up. They need to do rehab starts. So as gut-wrenching as it is, I think it's safe to say that we're not going to see Taiwan Mcgill back in this Mets rotation really for quite some time, probably 2 to 2.5 months at minimum, just knowing the ramp up, how long these things take. And again, it's all assuming that there isn't at least one setback during this process. So I feel for him. I feel for Julie, the entire Mcgill family. Guys, make sure to definitely, I love Julie, love the entire Mcgills. Julie's a great member and was actually in our live show last night too, chiming in as we were taking post-game callers and stuff of that nature. But I feel for them. I absolutely do. I'm going to reach out to her after we're live here and just say that, I obviously hope that he gets back and better ASAP. I feel gut-wrenched for Taiwan Mcgill. I really do. So that clearly tells you, okay, the Mets now, once again, are losing one of their key starters. And I know that Mcgill entered the season prior to DeGrom's injury on the outside looking in the rotation, but he stepped up big when DeGrom was shut down early with his own shoulder situation that he was going on there. And then, of course, Megill was cruising through the first 5 starts of the year, had some ups and downs during that time, but again, didn't really get any help from the relievers that came in for him when he exited games early, injury related or not. And now he's going to be on the shelf for, I would imagine, at minimum 2 to 2.5 months. Is not going to be able to even throw a baseball or do anything with that arm for the most part for the next 4 weeks at minimum. So absolutely gut-wrenching stuff. I'm feeling for them once more. But this just tells you, again, depth is so important for the Mets in this rotation, and it's absolutely crucial for them that they make sure that they, if not at least add something of significance at the deadline, definitely add depth, because you can never have enough depth for the Mets rotation. Max Scherzer will be returning before, I would say, July at worst. I think he'll return the first week of July, but he may return as soon as a date like June 26th, as long as everything goes right with his rehab. And I know that we haven't broken down much about this series preview yet, guys. I'll get into that in a second. Again, we need to break down what is the latest injury updates with this team, because it directly impacts the Mets. You thought Mcgill was coming back, and now he's out for, I would imagine, again, 2 to 2.5 months. So we'll see how the Mets combat this. If the likes of Scherzer and eventually DeGrom back in this rotation will make everything subside and that they don't have to worry much. However, regardless of the statuses for the Mets in their rotation, even in a best case scenario where everyone outside of Mcgill is fully healthy back in this rotation prior to the trade deadline, I fully expect the Mets to acquire at least one solid arm, whether that's more of a Trevor Williams, a depth guy that again can be surprising, like Williams has been a lot of times for the Mets this year, or if they really want to go all in for a full-fledged starter with the likes of a Frankie Montas and or someone like a Luis Castillo. Regardless, they need to make sure that they add depth, and I fully expect the Mets to do just that by the trade deadline, if not sooner. So that is your latest update regarding the likes of Tyler Megill. But now let's pivot back to the likes of Eduardo Escobar, folks, because what we know to this point is that, yeah, there was some speculation, there were some rumblings going around on social media yesterday that Escobar, prior to the game, was rushed to the hospital through an ambulance, and that seems like it's held true to this point. Mike Puma and DJ Thozar have both reported that it looks like, for the sake of Eduardo Escobar yesterday, that he was having some vision issues prior to the game, and they said, according to teammates, that they felt that he looked a little disoriented, and that led him, of course, to getting into the ambulance and heading back not heading back, but heading to the hospital. So we find out more on Escobar prior to wrapping up the show. Oh, wait, there we go. Never mind. There we go. Wow. Awesome news. Okay, awesome news. Again, my apologies for the visuals dropping. If it's dropping for a couple minutes, folks, again, it will pick back up. My connection issues, you know the drill by now. You've been a follower on the channel. It will get fixed hopefully by this weekend, but again, we'll see. Great update on Eduardo Escobar, folks. Just when we thought that maybe Escobar would be out of the line for potentially a decent amount of time, it has been reported by Mike Puma just now that, yes, Escobar is available off the bench. As says, Showalter probably be back in the lineup tomorrow. So that is phenomenal news. I don't know exactly what transpired with Eduardo Escobar, just by assuming until we find out probably from himself in either post-game or right before today's game. I would imagine that if he had dizziness and, was a little disoriented, maybe he was really dehydrated. Maybe it was just something along those lines, simple lines of, really hot weather out in the summer. Maybe, just maybe, I'm hoping for his sake that it was just dehydration. Maybe he had to get some IV in him, and then he's back and ready to go. It's awesome that he's off the bench. And talking about timing as well, that Fletch said in the chat, yes, this couldn't come out of a better time. That's why I waited till 4 p.m. Eastern to do the show, because I was like, you know what? I have a feeling that between 4 and 5, we're going to get some health updates on these guys, and that's awesome. So great news regarding Eduardo Escobar. He's back with the Mets. He might just pinch hit tonight. Again, we'll see what happens. He will be starting in the lineup tomorrow in Game 2, the 4-game set against the Marlins. But the unfortunate news is not the guy that maybe you originally thought, at least in Escobar, but rather Taiwan Mcgill, out for a substantial period of time, and that is definitely a blow to this Mets rotation, all things considered. But we talked about Eddie. We talked about the likes of Tyler Megill, so I'm glad we got those updates in there. That is, of course, massive and great to hear. Somewhat halfway, it's great to hear. The other half, I'm not happy about at all regarding Megill. But now let's start to deep dive this series, guys. That's what you chimed in for. And then, of course, after I break down everything that you need to know about the series, I'll answer some comments, questions, and concerns before we wrap up the show. We'll go for upwards an hour today. Nothing more. We will not be taking callers prior to today's game. We may, however, again, be taking callers in the post-game show. That'll all be indicative on how the nights go. But the Mets have a massive 4-game set, and to this point, we do not know exactly who everyone is pitching. So I apologize if I am, say, wrong about the alignment right now. If we find out clarity, I will make sure to put it in the comments down below after we were live here. Or, of course, in general, we'll find out tonight once we start watching the game, right? But as of now, it's to be determined pitcher for the Marlins. We still don't have a lineup for them out. For the Mets, however, we do have Carlos Carrasco, and Cookie is 7-2 on the year with a 3.93 ERA. He had one of his worst starts of the year, 5 days ago against the Angels, where he gave up 5 earned and not even 4 over 4 innings pitched. Again, he got worked by Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. It's not easy to beat those guys, but Cookie's placement of his pitches wasn't great either. I expect him to bounce back, though, and this is definitely a lineup in the Marlins that you should hopefully be able to jump on to a certain extent, as they on the season are 28-33. They lost their last series to the Phillies, but the series prior, they won a 2-game set, or a 3-game set, 2 out of the 3 against the Houston Astros that the Mets actually face after this Marlins series, coincidentally enough. No less, the Marlins, they've been up and down, but they've definitely been thriving since they had a little meetup between themselves and their manager, I would say a couple weeks ago, early in the beginning of the month, and they've been a far better team on paper since then. They've been hitting the ball better, and they've had some strong pitching more often than not, led by Sandy Alcantara, however you say his name, because I always mix it up. No less, tonight, at least for the Marlins, it looks like it may very well be the likes of Pablo Lopez starting if he returns from injury. Now, he's been day-to-day with a wrist injury, guys. He last pitched on June 10th against the Houston Astros, in which he gave up 2 earned over, I believe, 6 innings. He pitched a solid game against the Astros, and he's been looking really good so far this year. He's 4-2 on the year for the veteran right-hander with a 2.3 ERA, one of the better starters in all the NL at this point. And again, we still don't know the true status of the rotation, so because of that reason, that's why the little star there, it might be him, it might be the young southpaw and Garrett, who is scheduled to pitch tomorrow right now, but maybe he's going to say pitch today if they want Lopez tomorrow. So still wait and see. I know that's a little frustrating for us fans trying to figure out how the rotation is going to look, what the Mets will be facing. But again, we will have further clarity just within the coming hours, if not during the show still. Cookie Carrasco, game 1 against, I would say, either Lopez or Garrett potentially. Game 2, as scheduled right now, it is going to be the young and Braxton Garrett, who did face the Mets a little bit last year. The young southpaw, who's only pitched in 2 games so far this year because of the injuries to Pablo Lopez and others, is 1-1 on the year with a 4 ERA. He pitched 5.2 scoreless against the Astros a couple days ago, however. So again, looking solid. However, definitely a guy that the Mets should be jumping on. And the Mets have been hitting better against lefties as of late, and that's definitely encouraging. So hopefully they can continue to do the same and really try to ball out here in this 4-game set at home and really try to get themselves another leap forward on the Braves and others in the division by winning this series. But we have Taiwan Walker in the bump for game 2, and Ty, he's going to be intriguing as well, because Walker's 4-2 on the year with a 3.08 ERA. And for Walker's case, what's going to be massive about him is the fact that he came off of his best start of the season, having 10 strikeouts over, I believe, it was around 6 innings or so against the Angels. Just looked utterly dominant after he got worked a little bit in that first inning in Anaheim. Then he took it seriously, as one can jokingly say, and he was cruising after that for sure, having a season high in those 10 Ks. And that's something that he's been accustomed to doing prior to that start. That's going to be a key matchup here in game 2, and hopefully, again, the Mets have the upper hand. But then as we get, folks, to game 3, this is going to be, in my personal opinion, the biggest game of the series by far. This one can easily decide the series if, say, the Mets and the Marlins are 1-1 heading into this one. And then, of course, you have the final game, game 4. But Sandy Alcantara, however you want to say his name, he's been a stud since arriving in the league a couple years ago for the Marlins, and he hasn't skipped a beat. The reason why he's one of the key Marlins to watch the series, in my humble opinion, is the fact that, yeah, he's done really well against the Mets. He has a 2.82 ERA in 67 innings against the Mets in his career, but he has 63 strikeouts. This man, I will not forget it like it was yesterday, the last time that Alcantara faced the Mets last year, later in the season. He just carved the Mets up. He's almost a strikeout per inning against the Mets, just like he isn't completely far off from a strikeout per inning this entire season in the MLB as one of the best starters in baseball, not just in the NL, but all across Major League Baseball. And 91.1 innings pitched so far this year. Alcantara has a 1.68 ERA and 82 Ks. He has just been simply dominant, unhittable. This guy may very well end up winning the NL Cy Young this year, or at minimum being one of the heaviest candidates for it, because he is just absolutely cruising through the first, I would say, almost halfway through the season now before we know we're going to be at 80 games, I feel like. But that's huge. Facing off against, of course, that being Chris Bassitt, and Alcantara is also 6-2 on the year, in case I didn't say that already. Bassitt is coming off of massive performance, his best start as a New York Met. 7 punchies. He won 8 innings for the Mets and their victory to open this series against the Brewers. And Bassitt is 5-4 with a 4.01 ERA. Absolutely massive to see how he did in the last start against the Brewers, and hopefully he can continue that momentum and that positive upswing of things in his performance after originally looking really piss poor the past month prior, to continue to roll here on an upward direction, this time against Miami in Game 3. Then Game 4, pitching matchup-wise, this is, again, to be determined versus to be determined. We still don't know. However, just based on what I think the Mets may do and knowing that Meggill's out of the rotation now, for the Mets, it looks like it's going to be one of Trevor Williams or David Peterson, and I think it's really a coin flip as to who it's going to be. Now, because, again, the Mets, they have the Astros after this in a 2-game set, and then they have Miami, and then Astros back at home over the next couple series. It'll be interesting to see what they favor, but I would imagine it'll be one of Williams or Peterson. I just put Williams here, but again, I really do think it'll just be based on what is the best matchup in that game versus, say, was best matchup to start off the Astros series. No less, if the Mets do go with Williams as a starter in Game 4, the series finale, he's 1-3 with a 3.53 ERA on the year, while Peterson is 3-1 with 3.6 ERA. However, he did give up 4 earned in 4 innings against the Brewers, and the Brewers' massive victory against the Mets in Game 2 of this most recent series. So again, I would say a coin flip, a toss-up. Truly will be really based on matchup, what Buck wants to do, and we will, of course, will have more clarity once we get closer to the date. But I assume that's going to be Rogers, the young southpaw, on the bump for the Marlins, because Rogers is someone who, if you look at how he's aligned, he would just be pushed one day more than his normal every 5-day schedule to pitch here in Game 4. So that is what I would assume at this juncture until proven otherwise. And Rogers is not having a great year for the young southpaw. Looked awesome last year in the first half, was carving up the Mets. Again, another dominant young southpaw. Normally the Mets don't do well against, but again, he dealt with some injuries around the All-Star break and just wasn't exactly the same pitcher down the stretch, nor has he been the same pitcher in year 2. And he's been 3-5 with a 5.87 ERA. And yeah, he's definitely gotten worked a little bit. Hasn't went deep into games for the majority of the season. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of pitcher the Mets get in Rogers, should he, in fact, be the starter in Game 4. And for people in the chat wondering was the health statuses of Megill and Escobar, go back earlier in the show to check it out. That's what we broke down. But in a nutshell, Megill cannot throw for 4 weeks. So he's out, I would imagine, 2 to 2.5 months at minimum, including ramp up, rehab, and all that stuff without any setbacks. And Escobar is off the bench for the Mets tonight, and he will return as soon as tomorrow to the lineup. 1200, thank you so much for the donation. I'll address that quickly before we go forward. Continue smashing that like and subscribe button, guys, if you are enjoying the latest series preview show. Really do appreciate it. We deep dived again everything that you guys need to know. We found out live in real time here in the show regarding the news on Escobar, and that being in Mcgill. So make sure to go back earlier in the show if you're just chiming in and already missed it. I hate the fish. Hope we club them like a baby seal. Love you all except Zapucky. When Trevor May's back, kind of miss that dude. I miss May as well, and he's going to be huge once he returns, and he's ramping up, which is awesome. Thank you so much for the dono. Great member on the channel is 1200. And yeah, I mean, the fish have always been a problem for the Mets, as they have been a problem for basically every team in this division. One thing that I can honestly say about the Miami Marlins that I've noticed, not just over this year and years past, is that they definitely feel like they have their struggles against teams out of the NL East, but against teams in the NL East, they're usually a thorn in the side of the Phillies, even at times the Braves, the Nationals, and surely the Mets that we've seen in 2021, 2020, and years before that. However, I know the Phillies did just win 2 of 3 against Miami, but 2 of those 3 games really could have went either way, and Miami, in my opinion, was really, really close to at least winning that series, and even though they ended up losing 2 of 3 in their most recent matchup against Philly. But getting back now to this matchup, guys, we talked about the pitching matchups. Again, it's a toss-up. We'll break it down more as we do our post-game shows or post-game recaps. I'm not sure if I'll be able to go live for each post-game show this weekend, guys. I have a very busy schedule coming up. However, at minimum, I'll do my absolute best for like Saturday and Sunday, for instance, with Father's Day coming up. If I cannot be live, then I will make sure to do at least a quick recap. That's around 4 or 5 minutes that I will post for you guys. So stay tuned for that, no less. Charlene, how are you? Appreciate everyone else chiming in. But now let's get to the key Mets this series, guys. And I have definitely went a lot of different routes in regards to how I evaluate guys to watch. For example, the last series of my series preview, I discussed Eduardo Escobar as one of the key Mets to watch. And Escobar barely played, if at all, the entire series because of what transpired with him and his unexpected type of health issue that, again, thankfully he's back tonight now off the bench. My apologies once more again about the visuals, guys. Just give it a minute. It'll pick back up. Again, it's just been a seesaw, unfortunately, that I've been dealing with for a little bit here. Let's see. Padres going to pass the Mets shortly for best record in the NL. That is assuming that the Mets do not do absolutely great in this Marlins matchup. Wouldn't surprise me. The Padres are rolling, but again, I know some of the teams that those Padres are being as well. So context is key, right? They've been rolling no less. And Hogwatch, appreciate you chiming in, guys. Make sure to check out Hogwatch, phenomenal YouTuber, great friend of mine. Doing exactly what we do here for post-game shows, all different types of content, but not for the Mets, this time for the Padres. Great friend, even better YouTuber, so make sure to check him out. But now getting into the Mets, guys, for this series, again, it's always a toss-up with who's actually going to perform. I can do my best to provide some information that I think could help benefit the Mets and us fans evaluating who's going to step up. I have Starling Marte. However, Marte is back in tonight's lineup, which is great. He's in the 2-hole like he normally is. And Marte, a couple things I like about his matchup here against Miami. One, he's facing his former team. I think you always have at least a slight edge when you're facing a former team. And that was the biggest factor into why I had Escobar in my previous series preview. But again, he barely played in this series, so I wasn't at fault for that. We didn't expect his health situation to happen. No less Marte against the Marlins in his career, however. 281 average, 23 runs scored in 35 games against Miami. That's really strong. He has great numbers against basically every team in the NL East during his long time with the Pirates. And then, of course, last year he split time with the likes of the Miami Marlins, then got traded halfway through the year around the trade deadline to the Oakland A's, where he continued to thrive. However, he knows his pitching staff pretty well. He knows his team pretty well, and not far removed from being a Miami Marlin. I definitely like his chances in this series to step up. And we know that if the Mets are going to have a key series, they need Starling Marte in the lineup to, one, of course, be healthy, but two, just perform to his capabilities, because Marte is such a big X factor. You can tell that without him in the lineup, the Mets definitely miss him, and I don't think that's an understatement whatsoever with how dynamic of a player he's been all season long. However, a couple things that stand out more about Starling Marte and his game is the fact that in 24 home games this season, Marte has 4 home runs, 16 RBIs, a 326 average, and a 914 OPS. So that was definitely a factor in my decision-making here too. The fact that Marte is not just facing a former club that he knows very well, but also that he has been thriving for the Mets when he's playing at home. So I like that matchup, and hopefully, as long as he plays at minimum 3 of the 4, if not all 4 games in this matchup, I expect him to do some great things. And again, we will soon see if that actually transpires. Then let's get into the next guy I have. And this one, again, is a little bit different now because of the fact that Eduardo Escobar is going to be back in the Mets starting lineup tomorrow. When I made my notes here, I did this with the assumption that maybe we're going to have Escobar out for at minimum half, if not the majority of the series. No less JD Davis, who's been swinging a hot bat here in June, went like 1 for 4, 1 for 5 yesterday. But regardless, Davis has by all means been hitting better over this past month. And when you look at all of his advanced numbers, he's a guy that has just had piss poor luck, has been swinging through some pitches that he shouldn't, but has had a better approach on fastballs, which is awesome to see, has led to more success. But not only that, one, I do think JD is going to get a decent amount at minimum starting 2 of the 4 games in this series. He's starting tonight at DH and could be starting 3 of the 4 games, as a matter of fact, if not every single one at the DH/third base position. But against the Miami Marlins, he is one of the best Mets hitters right now. He has a 347 average against Miami in his career, 4 home runs, 12 RBIs, 17 runs scored in 33 games against the Fish. And then when you look at his numbers at home, yes, they don't favor him, but I will say when it comes to JD, his splits are a bit different because he has not been getting the same playing time as other players. However, at home this year, he is absolutely abysmal. He has a 173 average. Not that average means everything, but he also has a low OPS. However, something that does stand out about JD Davis is that should the Mets win this series, or at worst split 2 of 2, but hopefully win 3 of 4 at minimum. JD, when the Mets win games, he's definitely a factor. He has a 319 average and an 881 OPS in all games that he's a part of that the Mets win this year. So when the Mets win, it is in fact because of the likes of JD Davis more often than not being a factor in that victory. And he also has an over 1,000 OPS in a small sample size against arguably, and I shouldn't even say arguably, by far the 2 best pitchers that the Mets will see this series. Should they face Lopez, and they're going to face Alcantara, those 2, he has over 1,000 OPS against them both and against small sample size. So that's great for JD. I don't expect everyone to hit well against these pitchers, especially Alcantara, but JD might just be the X factor to help the Mets find out somehow, some way to win that game 3, which again will be anything but an easy task against potentially this year's Cy Young Award winner in the NL, even though that, again, it's early. We'll see what happens down the stretch. But then the final guy I have here might be a surprise to you because he has been absolutely horrendous so far in the month of June, and it has went directly in hand with his finger injury, and you cannot tell me otherwise. But that is, yes, Francisco Lindor, Mr. Smile. Now, a couple factors went into me picking Lindor here. One, I don't really see a rule too much where the Mets can, with ease. I shouldn't even say with ease. These games against the Marlins aren't going to be easy. They're 28 and 33 for a reason. They're only 5 games below 500. They've been playing a lot better baseball here in June. But Francisco Lindor, one, has a solid matchup against the Miami Marlins. He has a 260 average, 13 RBIs in 22 games, so that's great in a small sample size against Miami. At home, however, for Lindor is where he has thrived. He's been a far better hitter at home than he has been away. In 30 games, has 4 home runs, 22 RBIs, a 275 average, and an 801 OPS. However, expanding more on the numbers, Francisco Lindor in day games this year has simply been lights out. And what's the beauty about day games? The Mets' 3 of 4 games in this 4-game set are day games. Tonight's 7:10, then tomorrow's 4:10 or so, which I believe counts as a day game. Then the following 2 games are around 1:10 or so p.m. Eastern time for Sunday and Monday. But in 26 games during the day for Lindor this season, 6 home runs, 16 RBIs, 22 runs scored, almost a run scored per game pace, and a total of a 293 average and a 933 OPS. So yeah, Lindor, he likes day games. He's thriving. All those reasons are definitely factors here in my opinion. And also, when the Mets win, Lindor, as expected, is a factor in that more often than not. 42 games, all the Mets win so far this year because he's been a part of every win. 5 home runs, 31 RBIs, a 287 average, and a just sub 800 OPS. And he also has an 800 OPS in a small sample size against Alcantara. So for all those different factors and why I just think that this is time for Lindor to start breaking out, I know it won't be easy should he face at minimum 2 lefties in this series in both Garrett and Rogers, because Lindor, batting from the right side of the plate, has not done well whatsoever in a lot of ways so far this year. However, at minimum, he's going to be facing 2 righty starters as well. So I like his chances. I love the fact that the Mets have a bunch of day games in the series too. All those factors along with the matter of, yes, Lindor is going to break out at some point. Why not start here in this Miami series and finally get him feeling fully healthy? Hopefully we'll go from there. Pablo Lopez is pitching for the Marlins. There we go. That is why I assumed it. I'm glad we have it on the graphic so I wasn't completely off. So yes, there we go. Pablo Lopez will be anything but an easy task tonight for the Mets. Again, 2.3 ERA on the year. Hasn't pitched in 7 days now, so he has a little extra rest. That's coming off of a wrist injury, so we will see how the Mets do against them. However, I'm glad that I checked it and noticed his injury and saw that he was day-to-day. Had a feeling that he would be pitching in tonight's game, and that is, in fact, holding true now. Lopez will be on the bump game 1 against Carlos Carrasco and the Amazons. But now let's get into the key Marlins to watch this series, folks, before we wrap things up for people on replay and answer all your comments, questions, and concerns. If you guys have, again, been enjoying the series preview, thank you all so much for that. I hope everyone is having a phenomenal Friday night. I know it's Pride Night at Citi Field. It's actually, I think it's going to be kind of cool. You're going to see all the colorful crowd, the rainbows, all that stuff, but the Mets are wearing, of course, their home blacks because it's Friday night blackout. So it's going to be a nice contrast. You're going to see the difference between on the field to the crowd. I think it's going to make the colors pop more. And just, again, I think it's going to be a really cool experience at Citi Field. So for everyone attending, hope everyone has a fantastic time. But now let's get into the key Marlins to watch this series. We talked about Sandy already. That isn't a surprise, but Jesus Aguilar, definitely a guy to keep in mind. There are a lot of Marlins I could have put here, but I had to narrow it down to 3 because that's normally what I do. Aguilar, however, isn't just having a strong start to the season. 58 games, a 251 average, 9 home runs, 31 RBIs, and a 728 OPS. His past 7 games, he's been red hot as well. 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, over RBI pace over his past 7, a 276 average, and a 931 OPS. That's all impressive enough for the big slugging first baseman / DH for Miami. But against the Mets, Aguilar is always a pain in the ass, pardon my French. A 297 average, 4 home runs, 23 RBIs, and 38 games against the Mets in his career. More often than not, I feel like someone like Aguilar is always standing out, either getting a nice solo bomb or a 2-run shot against us, unfortunately, or again is a doubles machine. And he's always a guy that's messing with the Mets, on the infield, always having fun. He'll do the same exact thing with Marte's former teammate and, Lindor and others, just in general guys I know that he's closer with. But Aguilar, keep an eye on him. I think he's going to be a pest in this series. He isn't playing today, which is awesome. I'm glad that you said that, Chicken. The Mets without Aguilar in tonight's lineup could actually be an X factor for them. But regardless, Even with Aguilar out of the lineup tonight, as long as he's not injured, I expect him to be in the lineup for at minimum half the series. If not, then definitely 3 of 4. So Aguilar, still keep an eye on him. Again, he kills the Mets when he does play. Little surprised that he's not in the lineup, so I am curious if he is hurt or whatever. So I will definitely double check on that before the start of tonight's game. Then we get in Jazz Chisholm. And guys, there are many other people that I could pick here, but I went with Jazz for a couple of reasons. One, Jazz Chisholm, in case you guys aren't aware, is one of the best, most electrifying young phenoms of baseball right now. Not just because he's swaggy doing a Euro step to home plate or rounding third as he gets himself a nice home run and literally hitting eye-level fastballs for bombs. Wasn't just the fact that Jazz made really his debut against the Mets last year by taking Jacob deGrom deep on like a 101 or 102 fastball right down the pipe. It's not because of that, but Jazz, again, he is just such an electrifying young player. He's already one of the best second basemen in all of baseball right now, folks. He's just that good. Jazz, you can rightfully argue, might be the starting second baseman here that we're going to see in this year's All-Star game. It's going to be him or McGill. I hope it goes to McGill. I think he deserves it, but Jazz will be right there too. Jazz on the year for the young phenom from the Bahamas has himself a strong stat line so far. Only 51 games, a 246 average, low average, but not that that means too much. 13 home runs, 41 RBIs, and 10 stolen bags. This guy is quite the 5-tool player. He has it all. He has elite defense, elite speed on the bags, just an infectious player that you want to be around for sure if you want to have fun and have success for your club. And that's definitely the case with him, and an 836 OPS. But in his past 7 games, 231 average, 836 OPS, so the same as his season OPS, and 3 home runs, 4 RBIs during that span. So he's been swinging a hot bat as of late with plenty of slugging power in there. And Jazz is definitely someone that against the Mets has been a thorn in their side a little bit so far. In 18 career games against the Mets already in his young career, Jazz Chisholm has a 250 average, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, and 10 runs scored. So yes, Jazz, definitely a guy to keep an eye on. He's going to be high flyer. I think it's going to be a lot of fun watching him too. I hope he has fun, but I hope he has fun while the Marlins say lose 3-4 or get swept. You know, if that's the case, then we're both smiling at the end, right? But now a couple more guys I would like to mention before I kind of get to wrapping this up for people on replay before I take your comments, questions, and concerns on the live show is 2 more players I want to mention. One is Garrett Cooper. Garrett Cooper currently leads the Miami Marlins with 60 hits on the year. He's batting right around 310, 311. And against the Mets, he has awesome numbers in his career. So Garrett Cooper has been another guy, a pesky player, thorn in the Mets side, but he has also been Mr. Consistent this year for Miami and has been in a lot of ways, if not their best player, then surely one of them. And the other is a guy that has gotten a decent amount of playing time this year, especially as of late, and I would expect him to this series, is Jon Birdie, the Swiss Army knife of a position player there for Miami. Jon Birdie, who's off to a solid year. He's batting right under 280 right now. However, Birdie against the Mets, he just absolutely kills him. He's batting over 300. Doesn't have crazy home run power or anything like that, but he's just a pesky player that, again, like many other Miami Marlins, even back in the day, not so much as of recent, but again, we'll see if the series changes that. Miguel Rojas has been pesky for the Mets. You know, like there's a lot of different guys that have been in this Marlins core group in years past that definitely have stood out for, you know, not the right reasons because they've been a pain in the neck for the Mets. And Jon Birdie's definitely one of them. So just another guy I want to mention. And then, of course, you have the home run power with a big swing and miss in Jorge Soler, their big offseason acquisition. You have Avisail Garcia, who doesn't even have a 100 batting average against Mets in his career. So we'll see how he does this matchup. No, Miami doesn't have a terrible lineup. They swing the bat better as of late, and their pitching is something that has, to this point, carried them a little bit, even though they have dealt with more inconsistencies as of late due to injuries more than anything else. But when we look at rankings right now per Fangraphs, offensively, the Mets are the second best overall offense of baseball, trailing, surprise, surprise, the New York Yankees, the team in the other borough. But for the Marlins, surprisingly a little bit, because they have done so well here in June offensively, have really taken their game to another level. They're above average so far this year. They're 14th ranked with their offense right now per Fangraphs in all baseball. Starting pitching rankings, somehow, someway, the Mets do have the upper hand, but I do know that this is because, again, the Marlins, they've been front-loaded with their starters, have dealt with injuries, and haven't had enough consistency there. Mets right now have the 9th ranked rotation with all their injuries, which is still impressive. And for Miami, they are the 19th ranked rotation in baseball per Fangraphs. Bullpen rankings, the Mets are ranked 15th, but the bullpen has not looked great as of late. The reason why the Mets haven't dropped, they were 19th last time we did our series preview, might I add, a couple days ago. But the only reason why that rose is because of the fact that, like Shreve, for instance, yesterday didn't have any earned runs against him because that all went to Mcgill when in reality, I mean, who knows? If Mcgill didn't get hurt, maybe he would have gone out of that jam. I mean, again, it doesn't matter now, but just something to think about, food for thought. But Mets have the 15th bullpen rank in baseball right now, while the Marlins have 22nd. So rankings-wise, everything favors the Mets. Overall-wise, this Mets team absolutely needs to win this series. Even a series split, I'm not going to be upset about, but I'm surely not going to be ecstatic about either. This is finally the start of the Mets having a lesser schedule down the stretch here as we enter the second half of the year, or the next less than 20 games now, 15, 20. It's important for them to take advantage, and especially take advantage against teams within the division. Because in case you guys don't know, when it has to do with the Mets or any other team in the NL East, the team that wins the most games, has the best record against the rivals in the NL East, has won the division over the past 9 years, folks. So that's why it's important not to just do well against the Braves, the Nationals, the Phillies, but same thing goes with the Marlins. Don't let them get an upper hand on you. Make sure that you can jump on them now. Make a statement here, because we face Miami again a week from now and plenty down the stretch this season. Make an early statement. Win 3-4 at minimum in this series. That is what I'm truly hoping to see. The Mets are going to lose any game this series. I would hope and I would assume that would be game 3 with Sandy Alcantara on the mound, just because, again, he's on another level pitching wise. He's not just the best pitcher in this rotation for Miami, but he is one of the best pitchers in all baseball. So if it's going to happen, I would imagine it would happen that series. But again, we will soon see what transpires starting tonight in game 1 against the Fish. But for that being said, folks, that's going to wrap up everything that you guys need to know about the series preview. I do apologize for ranting out a little bit longer than I normally do. People in the live show, I'm going to get your comments, questions, and concerns here in a second. People on replay, let me know your thoughts down below. How are you feeling about this 4-game set against Miami? How are you feeling about the updates? The unfortunate update for Taiwan Mcgill out a month, but it's really going to be 2.5 or so because he has to get ramped up. How do you feel about Eduardo Escobar coming back, looking like he'll be in the starting lineup in game 2 and hopefully throughout the remainder of the series? What's your overall thoughts, and what do you think are the key players for the Mets and for the Marlins as well in either winning or losing this 4-game set? Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this great Mets content, and stay tuned for more great content and streams all throughout the next week and just daily here on the channel per usual on WardyNYM. Again, folks, people in the live show, let's get those comments now. But for people on replay, this is where I'll be cutting things off.